The champagne glass slipped from Amara Okafor's trembling fingers, shattering against the marble floor of the luxury hotel suite. There, on the king-sized bed draped in rose petals, was her husband of 12 years, Chaik, tangled in silk sheets with her former best friend, Ngozi Adelik, the woman who had held her hand through chemotherapy sessions. The woman who had promised to care for her twins if anything happened to her. What would you do if you walked in on this? Hit like if you've been betrayed, and comment below where you're watching from. Chaik. Amara's voice cracked like thunder in the Lagos penthouse suite. Her silk head wrap, carefully arranged to hide her bald scalp, began to unravel as she stumbled backward. The oncology report in her other hand, the one declaring her officially in remission after 2 grueling years, fluttered to the ground like a discarded dream. Chaik's dark eyes widened in horror as he scrambled to cover himself. Amara, you're supposed to be at the hospital? Getting my results, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of her racing heart. Good news, by the way. I'm cancer-free. Her laugh was hollow, bitter. I rushed here to surprise my devoted husband with the news. Ngozi had the audacity to clutch the sheet to her chest, her perfectly made-up face showing no trace of shame. Amara, we can explain. Explain what? Amara's voice rose to a scream that echoed off the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Victoria Island. How you've been playing house with my husband while I was fighting for my life. How you both prayed I wouldn't make it. The pieces were falling into place now, Chaik's frequent business trips, Ngozi's insistence on taking the twins, Kemi and Taiwo, for extended weekends. The way they'd exchanged glances during her darkest moments, when the doctors weren't sure she'd survive the aggressive treatment. Chaik stood, wrapping a towel around his waist. At 38 he was still the handsome man she'd married, but now she saw the cruelty in his sculpted features. You don't understand the pressure I've been under, Amara. Watching you waste away, taking care of the children. Our children, she corrected, her voice deadly quiet. I needed comfort. Ngozi was there. The slap echoed through the suite before Amara realized she'd moved. Chaik's head snapped to the side, and when he looked back at her, there was something cold and calculating in his eyes that she'd never seen before. You want to know the truth? His voice was ice-cold now, the mask finally slipping. I've been planning this for months. Ngozi and you were in love. We're getting married as soon as our divorce is finalized. Divorce? The word felt foreign on her tongue. Ngozi finally found her voice, smoothing her long weave extensions. Chaik was going to tell you gently, Amara, after you? Well, we thought the cancer would. You thought I'd die and save you the trouble? Amara's vision blurred with rage, not tears. She was done crying over these people. Chaik's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He glanced at it and smiled, actually smiled. That's my lawyer. The divorce papers should be ready by morning. I'm taking the house, the cars, and primary custody of the twins. You'll get supervised visits, of course. When you're stable. Amara felt something fundamental shift inside her chest, like tectonic plates rearranging. The frightened, sick woman who had walked into this room was gone. In her place stood someone harder, someone forged in the fire of betrayal and tempered by survival. You think I'm going to disappear quietly? She asked, her voice eerily calm as she bent to pick up her oncology report. You think I survived stage 3 breast cancer to be defeated by a cheating husband and his mistress? She walked toward the door, then paused, looking back at the 2 people who had tried to bury her while she was still breathing. You have no idea what you've just unleashed. As the elevator doors closed behind her, Amara pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact she hadn't used in years. Ada Ora Nwosu, the most ruthless divorce attorney in Lagos, and her former law school roommate. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Amara? My God, I heard about your illness. How are you? I'm alive, Idora. And I need your help destroying 2 people who bet against my survival. The line was quiet for a moment. Then Adaora's laugh was sharp as a blade. Tell me everything. And Amara? Welcome back from the dead. But as Amara stepped into the Lagos evening, she had no idea that Chaik's betrayal was just the beginning. Hidden in his phone was evidence of something far worse than infidelity, something that would either save her children or destroy them all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 3 weeks later, Amara sat in Adaora's chrome and glass office on the 23rd floor of a Victoria Island skyscraper, watching her oldest friend review the financial documents spread across the mahogany conference table. The Lagos skyline glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but Amara's focus was razor-sharp on the papers that would either liberate or destroy her. "This is worse than we thought," Adaora murmured, adjusting her designer glasses as she studied bank statements. At 42, she'd built her reputation demolishing men who underestimated their wives, and her tailored Ankara blazer spoke of success earned through countless courtroom victories. Chaik's been systematically hiding assets for over 18 months. Amara's stomach clenched. She'd lost 20 pounds during chemotherapy and hadn't gained it back, making her look fragile in her flowing kaftan. But her eyes burned with quiet fury. "Show me." 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, totaling 2.3 billion naira. A private property investment company registered under Ngozi's maiden name. And this, Adaora slid a photograph across the table. A beachfront mansion in Lekki that he purchased 8 months ago, while you were in intensive care. The betrayal cut deeper than any scalpel. While she'd been fighting for her life, Chaik had been building a new one without her. The twins don't know? According to your housekeeper, Martha, he's been telling them you're too sick for visitors. They think you're still in the hospital. Adaora's voice softened with rare emotion. "Amara, they've been asking for you. Martha says Kemi cries every night." The mention of her 8-year-old daughter shattered something inside Amara's chest. Kemi, with her bright smile and endless questions. Taiwo, quieter but equally loving, who used to sneak into her bedroom during thunderstorms. They were her world, and Chaik was using them as weapons. "There's more," Adaora continued grimly. "I had a private investigator follow them. Ngozi's been introducing herself as the children's new mother at their school events. She's registered as their emergency contact." Amara's hands clenched into fists. "She what?" "And Chaik filed a petition claiming you're mentally unstable due to cancer treatments. He's arguing that you're unfit for custody and that the children need stability during your recovery period." The room spun slightly. Amara gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white against her dark skin. "Can he do that?" "Not if I have anything to say about it." Adaora's smile was predatory. "But we need to move fast. He's scheduled a custody hearing for next week, hoping to get temporary orders while you're supposedly too weak to fight back." Amara stood and walked to the window, staring down at the bustling streets of Lagos below. Somewhere in this city, her children were being told lies about their mother. Somewhere, Chaik and Ngozi were congratulating themselves on their clever scheme. "What do you need from me?" she asked without turning around. "Everything. Bank records, emails, text messages, anything that shows premeditation." "And Amara?" Adaora's reflection appeared beside hers in the window. "Are you prepared for this to get ugly? Because once we start, there's no going back." Amara thought of Kemi's tears, of Taiwo's confusion, of the 2 years she'd spent fighting death only to discover her husband had been hoping it would win. "I died on that hospital bed 3 times during treatment, Adaora. They brought me back each time because I had something to live for, my children. If Chaik thinks he can steal them while I was saving my life, he's about to learn exactly how ruthless a woman can be when she has nothing left to lose." Her phone buzzed with a text message. "Unknown number, stop digging or you'll lose more than your marriage. Some secrets are worth killing for." Amara showed the message to Adaora, whose expression darkened. "We're on to something big," she said. "Someone's scared." But as they prepared to leave the office, neither woman noticed the black sedan that had been following Amara for days, or the telephoto camera lens focused on the office windows from a building across the street. The war for Amara's life was about to begin, and her enemies had resources she couldn't imagine. But they'd made one critical error. They'd underestimated a mother's love and a survivor's rage. Tomorrow, she would see her children for the first time in 3 weeks. What she didn't know was that it might be the last time she'd see them alive. Don't miss what happens when Amara finally confronts her twins. Like this video if you're rooting for justice, and subscribe for more intense African drama stories. The iron gates of the Okafor family compound in Ikoyi stood like sentinels guarding secrets Amara was no longer welcome to know. She sat in Adaora's black Mercedes, her hands trembling as she stared at the house where she'd built a life, raised her children, and nearly died believing she was loved. The security guard, Emeka, looked confused when he saw her. "Madame Amara? But Oga said you are still in the hospital." "I'm here to see my children, Emeka." Her voice was steady despite the storm raging inside her chest. Martha, the housekeeper, burst through the front door before Emeka could decide what to do. The older woman's face crumpled with joy and relief as she ran toward the car. "Madam, you are alive. The children, they miss you so much." Amara stepped out of the car and embraced Martha, inhaling the familiar scent of coconut oil and kindness that had been her anchor during the darkest months of treatment. "Where are they?" "In the garden with Miss Ngozi. She has been staying here, sleeping in your bedroom." Martha's voice dropped to a whisper. "The children are confused, madam. They ask why their mama doesn't come home." Through the flowering bougainvillea that lined the garden path, Amara could hear her children's laughter. 8-year-old voices, bright and innocent, unaware that their world was built on lies. She followed the sound like a drowning woman following light. There they were, Kemi and Taiwo, her beautiful twins, playing with building blocks under the African tulip tree where she used to read them stories. Kemi had grown taller, her hair braided with colorful beads. Taiwo wore his favorite Arsenal jersey, the one she bought him for his birthday. And there was Ngozi, sitting in the white wicker chair that had been Amara's favorite spot, looking every inch the replacement wife in a flowing yellow sundress. "Mama!" Kemi's scream of joy pierced the afternoon air. Both children abandoned their blocks and raced toward her with the kind of desperate urgency that broke Amara's heart into sharp fragments. She fell to her knees as they crashed into her arms, breathing in their familiar scent of sunshine and innocence. "My babies," she whispered, holding them so tightly she was afraid she might break them. "Mama missed you so much." "We thought you died," Taiwo whispered against her neck. "Daddy said you were too sick to come home." "Auntie Ngozi said you might not remember us anymore," Kemi added, her small hands frantically touching Amara's face as if to confirm she was real. Over their heads, Amara met Ngozi's eyes. The woman who had betrayed her sat frozen in the chair, caught between guilt and defiance. She was beautiful in the way that some women are beautiful, carefully constructed perfection that photographed well but held no warmth. "Hello, Ngozi." Amara's voice could have frozen water. "Amara." Ngozi stood slowly, smoothing her dress. "The children weren't expecting you. Perhaps you should have called first." "Called my own house to visit my own children?" The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Kemi and Taiwo sensed it, clinging tighter to their mother with the intuitive fear that children develop when their world becomes unstable. "Mama, are you coming home now?" Kemi asked, her voice small and hopeful. Before Amara could answer, she heard footsteps on the stone path. Chike rounded the corner with his lawyer, Barrister Okonkwo, a thin man in an expensive suit who specialized in making inconvenient wives disappear legally. "What is she doing here?" Chike's voice was sharp with anger, but Amara caught something else underneath: fear. "Visiting my children." She stood, keeping her arms protectively around the twins. "Daddy, look. Mama came home." Taiwo's excitement was heartbreaking in its innocence. Chike's expression softened when he looked at his son, but hardened immediately when his eyes returned to Amara. "Children, go inside with Auntie Ngozi. The adults need to talk." "No." Kemi's small voice was surprisingly firm. "I want to stay with Mama." "Kemi, obey your father," Ngozi said, stepping forward. "You're not my mother," Kemi shot back with 8-year-old fury that made Amara's heart swell with fierce pride. Barrister Okonkwo cleared his throat. "Mrs. Okafor, I have a court order restricting your access to the children pending the custody hearing. You're in violation." "Which court order?" Adora's voice cut through the garden like a blade. She strode through the gate behind them, briefcase in hand and legal fire in her eyes. "Because I've been monitoring all filings in this case, and no such order exists." The lawyer's confident expression wavered. The motion was filed this morning and withdrawn an hour later when you realized you had no legal standing. Adaora smiled with deadly sweetness. Did you really think you could intimidate a grieving mother with fake paperwork? Chike's jaw clenched. Amara, you look unwell. Perhaps the children shouldn't see you in this condition. It was a calculated cruelty designed to make her doubt herself, to make her children doubt her. But Amara had faced down cancer. Her husband's psychological warfare felt almost quaint by comparison. I look like a woman who survived what you hoped would kill me, she replied evenly. That's when she noticed it, Taiwo's sharp intake of breath, the way his small body had gone rigid against her side. He was staring at something behind Chike with the wide-eyed terror of a child who had seen too much. Following his gaze, Amara saw a man standing in the shadows of the house. Tall, scarred, with dead eyes that she recognized from newspaper crime reports. Kazim, the butcher, Adeyemi, Lagos's most notorious enforcer. What was a man like that doing in her family home? The answer hit her like ice water. Chike hadn't just stolen her money and her children. He'd gotten involved with people who solved problems permanently. And she was their biggest problem. Comment your thoughts on this betrayal. Should Amar run or fight? Don't forget to share this story with someone who loves African drama. The silence in the garden stretched like a wire about to snap. Kazim stepped from the shadows, his massive frame moving with the fluid grace of a predator. Amara instinctively pulled her children closer, her mother's instincts screaming danger even as her mind struggled to process what she was seeing. Uncle Kazim brought us toys yesterday, Taiwo whispered, his small voice tinged with confusion and fear. Uncle. The word hit Amara like a physical blow. This killer, this man whose name was whispered in fear across Lagos, had been around her children. Playing with them. Buying them gifts. Chike. Her voice was deadly quiet. What have you done? Her husband's face had gone ashen, but Ngozi stepped forward, her chin raised with defiant arrogance. Kazim is a family friend. He's been helping with security during your absence. Security? Adora's voice cracked like a whip. Or intimidation? Kazim's laugh was like gravel in a cement mixer. Beautiful ladies, there's no need for tension. I simply came to check on my investment. Investment? The word hung in the air like poison gas. Amara felt the puzzle pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. The offshore accounts. The hidden assets. The desperate urgency of Chike's divorce timeline. You borrowed money from him, she breathed, staring at her husband in disbelief. Not borrowed, Kazim corrected, his scarred face stretching into something that might have been a smile. Partnership. Your husband had an excellent business proposal, a beautiful wife with terminal cancer, substantial life insurance, and property that would soon be available. The garden tilted around Amar. They hadn't just hoped she would die. They had planned for it, profited from it. And when she'd survived, the threatening messages, she whispered. The car following me. You're trying to finish what cancer couldn't. Kemi began to cry, sensing the adult terror surrounding her even if she didn't understand it. Taiwo pressed himself against Amara's side, his small body trembling. Mama, I'm scared, Kemi whimpered. Take the children inside, Martha, Amara said, never taking her eyes off Kazim. But the housekeeper had vanished, probably warned to disappear before things got ugly. Actually, Kazim said conversationally, the children might want to stay. Family meetings are important. It was a threat wrapped in politeness, delivered with the casual confidence of a man who had never faced real consequences. But he'd made a mistake. He'd threatened her children in front of her, and something primitive and fierce awakened in Amara's chest. You know what I realized in the hospital? She said, her voice growing stronger with each word. When you're dying, really dying, you stop being afraid of men like you. You stop being afraid of anything except losing what matters most. She kissed the top of each child's head, then gently moved them behind her. Kemi, Taiwo, I need you to walk very slowly to the gate. Auntie Adaora is going to take you somewhere safe. I don't think so, Chike finally found his voice. They're my children too. Are they? Amara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Because I have some very interesting documents in my car. Bank records showing payments to Kazim that started 3 weeks after my diagnosis. Insurance policies taken out on my life without my knowledge. Text messages between you and Ngozi discussing my inevitable death and your plans for afterward. The color drained from Ngozi's face. You're lying. Am I? Amara pulled out her phone, showing them a screen full of message threads. Amazing what people will say over WhatsApp when they think the other person is too sick to check their phone. She'd been weak, yes, dying, but she'd never been stupid. Ada Ora stepped forward, her legal mind seizing the moment. Those messages, combined with the financial evidence we've gathered, constitute conspiracy to commit fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. The police are very interested in your business arrangement, Mr. Adeyemi. Kazim's casual demeanor cracked slightly. You have no proof. We have everything. Amara's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Bank transfers, email chains, recorded phone calls. Did you really think I survived 2 years of chemotherapy without learning to fight dirty? That's when she saw it, the flash of panic in Chaik's eyes, the way he glanced toward the house. There was something else. Something they hadn't found yet. What are you hiding in my house, Chaik? Nothing. There's nothing. The sound of sirens began to wail in the distance, growing closer. Ada Ora smiled with satisfaction. I called them 20 minutes ago, when we discovered the extent of your husband's crimes. They're bringing a warrant to search the premises. Panic flashed across 3 faces simultaneously. Even Kazim looked uncertain now, his predator's instincts telling him to flee. But it was Ngozi who broke first. This is insane, she shrieked. We never hurt anyone. The plans changed when she survived. Shut up. Chaik roared, but the damage was done. The sirens were getting closer, but Amara knew that men like Kazim didn't go quietly. He was already reaching inside his jacket, his dead eyes calculating the odds of eliminating all witnesses before the police arrived. That's when Taiwo did something that would haunt Amara's dreams for years to come. Her quiet, sensitive son stepped out from behind her and looked directly at Kazim. My mama is stronger than you, he said in his clear 8-year-old voice. She fought the cancer monster and won. You're just another monster, and mama always wins. Kazim's hand froze on his weapon. For just a moment, his mask of casual violence slipped, revealing something almost like shame in his scarred features. But the moment stretched too long, and Amara saw the calculation return to his eyes. He was going to kill them all, her, the children Edora. The only witnesses to his confession. The gate burst open as the first police vehicle roared into the compound, but Amara knew it might be too late. Kazim's hand was moving toward his gun, and she had perhaps 3 seconds to save her children's lives. She had survived cancer, betrayal, and financial ruin. But could she survive the next 30 seconds? Hit like if you think Amara can protect her children. What do you think happens next? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling stories. Time crystallized into sharp, brutal clarity. Amara saw Kazim's hand emerging from his jacket, the gleam of metal catching the afternoon sunlight. She saw Edaora diving toward her briefcase where, please God, she kept the pepper spray Amara had given her years ago. She saw her children's faces, still innocent despite everything, trusting their mother to keep them safe. And she saw something else, a garden hose coiled near the fountain, attached to a high-pressure nozzle she used for cleaning the patio. Cancer had taught her that survival sometimes required desperate measures. Kemi Taiwo, down. She lunged for the hose as Kazim's weapon cleared his jacket. The first police officers were shouting at the gate, but they were too far away, moving too slowly through the compound's winding paths. The high-pressure water caught Kazim directly in the face, sending him stumbling backward with a roar of rage and surprise. His shot went wild, shattering a window in the house behind them. Run! Amara screamed to her children, maintaining the pressurized stream as Kazim wiped water from his eyes and tried to regain his footing. But Chaik grabbed Kemi's arm as she ran past him. Nobody's going anywhere until we sort this out. His daughter looked up at him with a confusion that broke Amara's heart. Daddy, why are you holding me so tight? You're hurting me. Because your mother is being unreasonable? he said, his handsome face twisted with desperation. "Everything I did was for this family. You tried to have me killed." Amara kept the water pressure on Kazim, who was reaching for a backup weapon while shouting orders in Yoruba to someone Amara couldn't see. "The plan changed when you survived." Ngozi screamed over the chaos. "We never wanted you dead, we just wanted my money and my children while I was too weak to fight back," Amara finished. The water was buying them time, but Kazim was adapting, using a garden table as a shield while he flanked her position. That's when Taiwo did something that made his mother's heart soar with pride and terror. Her quiet son picked up one of his building blocks, a heavy wooden piece shaped like a castle, and threw it as hard as his 8-year-old arm could manage. It struck Kazim in the temple with a solid thunk that echoed across the garden. "That's for threatening my mama," Taiwo said with 8-year-old fury. Kazim stumbled, momentarily dazed, and in that instant the first police officers rounded the corner with weapons drawn. "Lagos State Police. Drop your weapons. Get on the ground." The garden exploded into controlled chaos. Officers surrounded Kazim, shouting commands in English and Yoruba. Adaora was speaking rapidly to the lead detective, showing him documents from her briefcase. Chike finally released Kemi and raised his hands, his face cycling through expressions of panic, resignation, and calculation. But Ngozi bolted. She ran toward the back of the compound, her yellow sundress streaming behind her as she headed for the service entrance that led to the neighboring property. Amara had a split second to decide whether to let her escape or pursue the woman who had tried to steal her entire life. She dropped the hose and ran. "Mamti no!" Kemi screamed behind her, but Amara was already sprinting across the lawn, fueled by 2 years of suppressed rage and the adrenaline of survival. Ngozi was fast, but Amara had run 5 kilometers every morning before her diagnosis. Chemotherapy had weakened her, but fury gave her wings. She caught up at the back gate, tackling Ngozi to the ground with an impact that drove the breath from both their lungs. They rolled in the grass, a tangle of limbs and fabric in years of betrayed friendship. "Why?" Amara gasped, pinning Ngozi's wrists to the ground. "Why did you do this to me? To us?" Ngozi's carefully applied makeup was smeared with tears and dirt, revealing the desperation beneath her polished exterior. "Because you had everything. The perfect husband, the beautiful children, the money, the respect. And you were dying anyway. It wasn't fair that someone else should get it all." The honesty was more shocking than any lie. Ngozi hadn't betrayed her out of love for Chike or even greed. She'd done it out of pure, corrosive envy. "So you decided to help death along?" Amara's voice was deadly quiet. "We never." The plan changed. Chike said if you survived we'd just divorce normally, but then Kazim wanted his money back, and you started investigating. So you sent threatening messages. Had me followed. Tried to terrify me into disappearing quietly. Police officers were running toward them now, but Amara didn't move. She stared down at the woman who had held her hand through chemotherapy while planning to steal her life. "The children trusted you," she whispered. "They loved you like family." For the first time, genuine shame flickered across Ngozi's features. "I never wanted to hurt them. I thought they'd be happier with a mother who wasn't sick all the time." It was the cruelest cut of all, the suggestion that her children would be better off without her, that her struggle to survive had somehow damaged them. But then Amara heard Kemi's voice calling her name, heard Taiwo asking a police officer if his mama was okay, and she realized the truth. Her children had watched her fight the impossible and win. They had learned that love meant staying, even when staying was hard. They had learned that their mother was stronger than cancer, stronger than betrayal, stronger than men with guns. They had learned what she was only now understanding herself. "Officer," she called to the approaching policeman, never taking her eyes off Ngozi. "You'll want to arrest this woman for conspiracy to commit fraud and conspiracy to commit murder. She's going to tell you everything about her relationship with Kazim Adeyemi and their plans for my life insurance policy." As the handcuffs clicked around Ngozi's wrists, Amara stood and walked back toward her children, her head high despite the dirt on her clothes and the exhaustion in her bones. But her victory was about to turn into something far more complicated. Waiting by the fountain was Detective Inspector Folklore Adebayo, holding a thick manila envelope and wearing an expression that made Amara's blood run cold. "Mrs. Okafor," the detective said grimly, "we need to talk. What we found in your husband's study, this case is bigger than attempted murder. Much bigger. What could be worse than discovering your husband wanted you dead?" Amara was about to find out. Don't miss the shocking revelation that changes everything. Like and subscribe if this story is keeping you on the edge of your seat. The study that had once been Chaik's private sanctuary now looked like a crime scene investigation. Papers covered every surface, computer cables snaked across the floor, and Detective Inspector Folklore Adebayo stood behind the mahogany desk like a general surveying a battlefield. Amara sat in the leather chair across from her, still wearing the dirt-stained clothes from her fight with Ngozi, while Adaora took notes on a legal pad beside her. Through the window, she could see Kemi and Taiwo in Martha's care, safely separated from the adult world that had tried to destroy their family. "Before we begin," Detective Adebayo said, her dark eyes serious in a face that had seen too much corruption, "I need you to understand that what we discuss doesn't leave this room. Your husband wasn't just planning insurance fraud, Mrs. Okafor. He was laundering money for the Akpara crime syndicate." The name hit Amara like ice water. Everyone in Lagos knew about the Akparas, a criminal empire that controlled everything from drug trafficking to government contracts. They were the kind of people who made problems disappear permanently. "How much money?" Amara's voice was steadier than she felt. "Over 8 billion naira in the past 2 years. Detective Adebayo opened the manila envelope and spread photographs across the desk. Shell companies, fake invoices, construction projects that existed only on paper. What people? But even as she asked, Amara was remembering faces from Chaik's business dinners, men with dead eyes and expensive suits who spoke in coded language about projects and investments. Including Deputy Governor Emeka Akpra himself, Detective Adebayo said grimly. "We have photos from your anniversary party last year. You were photographed shaking hands with one of the most wanted men in West Africa." The anniversary party. Amara remembered feeling uncomfortable that night, wondering why Chaik had invited so many strangers to what should have been an intimate celebration. She'd been in the early stages of treatment then, weak and distracted, trusting her husband to handle the details of their social life. "They used me," she whispered. "My illness, my public appearances with Chaik, I was providing legitimacy for their operation." "The perfect cover," Adaora said bitterly. "A respected architect with a beloved wife fighting cancer. Who would suspect such a sympathetic figure of criminal activity?" Detective Adebayo pulled out another photograph, surveillance images of Amara at various charity events, hospital fundraisers, cancer awareness walks. "Your public profile made Chaik untouchable. Nobody investigates the husband of a cancer patient." It was brilliant in its way. Amara felt sick, but not from her treatment. Every public appearance, every speech about hope and resilience, every photo in the newspapers, it had all been providing cover for criminals who destroyed lives with the same casual efficiency that cancer destroyed cells. "But then you survived," the detective continued, "and suddenly their perfect cover story had a problem. A survivor who might start paying attention to her husband's business. Who might ask uncomfortable questions about where their money was coming from. So they decided to eliminate the problem," Amara said. The pieces were forming a picture more horrifying than she'd imagined. The affair with Ngozi wasn't just betrayal. It was strategy. "Partly. Though we believe your husband's feelings for Miss Adelik were genuine, the timing was convenient. Divorce you while you're weak, take control of assets that could be used as evidence, ensure you're discredited if you ever tried to expose the operation." Amara's phone buzzed. "Unknown number. Your husband is in custody. Your children are vulnerable. Cooperate or they disappear tonight." She showed the message to Detective Adebayo, whose expression darkened further. "Maybe years." The walls of the study seemed to be closing in. Amara had fought cancer to survive for her children, only to discover that survival meant hiding from killers who wanted to silence her forever. "There might be another option," Adaora said slowly. "But it's dangerous." Detective Adebayo leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" They want Amara silenced because she's a witness. But what if she became something more valuable? What if she became bait? The silence stretched like a taut wire. Outside, Amara could hear her children's laughter as they played with Martha, blissfully unaware that their world was fracturing again. "You want me to help catch them," Amara said. It wasn't a question. "We've been trying to infiltrate the Akpara organization for 3 years, Detective Adebayo admitted. "They're too insular, too careful. But you have something they want." "What?" "Access to your husband's records. Knowledge of their operations. And most importantly, you're someone they underestimated." The detective's smile was sharp. "They planned your death, Mrs. Okafor. They have no idea they're dealing with someone who's already died and came back stronger." Through the window, Amara watched Kemi teaching Taiwo a clapping game, their identical smiles bright against the gathering dusk. They looked so much like their father, but they had her stubbornness, her refusal to surrender. "What would I have to do?" "Convince the Akparas that you're willing to cooperate. That you'll keep their secrets in exchange for your children's safety. Get close enough to gather evidence we can use in court." "You're asking me to betray everyone who thinks I'm dead," Amara said slowly. "To make them believe I'm weak and frightened when I'm actually planning their destruction," Adaora finished. "It's poetic justice, really." But even as Amara considered the plan, she knew it would require her to become someone she'd never been, a liar, a manipulator, a woman who could smile at her enemies while planning their downfall. Cancer had changed her, but this would transform her completely. "There's something else," Detective Adebayo said reluctantly. "Your husband is asking to see you. He claims he has information that could save your life, but he'll only share it with you directly." "It's a trap," Adaora said immediately. "Maybe. Or maybe he's finally ready to tell the truth about how deep this goes." Amara stood and walked to the window, watching her children play in the garden where, hours earlier, a killer had threatened their lives. They deserved better than a mother in hiding. They deserved better than a world where criminals could destroy families without consequence. "When do I meet with my husband?" she asked. Detective Adebayo checked her watch. "He's being held at Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison. Visiting hours tomorrow at 2 p.m. "And the Akparas?" "We believe they'll contact you within 48 hours. They need to know what you know and what you're planning to do with that knowledge." Amara turned back to face the 2 women who were asking her to risk everything she'd fought to save. "If I do this, if I become your bait, I want guarantees. Safe houses for my children. New identities if this goes wrong. And when it's over, I want the Akparas to pay for every family they've destroyed." "Done," Detective Adebayo said without hesitation. But as they shook hands, none of them knew that Chaik's information would reveal a truth so shocking it would change everything they thought they knew about the case. The woman who had survived cancer was about to discover that some betrayals run deeper than marriage, deeper than money, deeper than anything she could have imagined. Kirikiri Maximum Security Prison squatted like a concrete beast on the outskirts of Lagos, its walls stained with decades of human misery. Amara sat across from her husband in the sterile visiting room, separated by bulletproof glass and 2 years of lies that felt thicker than any physical barrier. Chaik looked smaller somehow, diminished by the orange prison uniform and the weight of his crimes. But his eyes still held that calculating intelligence that had first attracted her 15 years ago, and that had nearly destroyed her life. "You look good," he said through the intercom, his voice hollow with something that might have been regret. "Stronger than I expected. Cancer couldn't kill me, Chaik. Did you really think prison would?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I suppose I underestimated you. Again. What information do you have for me?" She wouldn't waste time on small talk, wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much his betrayal had cost her. Chaik leaned closer to the glass, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "The Akparas don't just want you dead, Amara. They want you destroyed. Your reputation, your family name, your children's future, everything. Tell me something I don't know." "Your father." The 2 words hit her like a physical blow. Dr. Bayon Adebayo had been Lagos's most respected oncologist before his death in a car accident 3 years ago. He'd been Amara's hero, her inspiration, The reason she'd fought so hard to survive cancer. What about my father? Chike's smile was cruel as a blade. He wasn't the saint you think he was, Amara. Those experimental cancer treatments that saved so many lives? They were funded by Akpara money. Your father was laundering money through fake medical research grants for over a decade. The visiting room tilted around her. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself why the Akparas are so interested in you personally. It's not just about what you might know about my business. It's about what your father knew about theirs. Amara's mind raced through memories, her father's late-night phone calls, the expensive equipment that appeared in his research lab without explanation, the way he'd always had funding for treatments other doctors couldn't afford. He was saving lives, she whispered, with blood money. And when he started asking questions about where the funding came from, when he threatened to expose the operation. Chike shrugged. Car accidents happen every day in Lagos traffic. The room was spinning now. Her father hadn't died in a random accident. He'd been murdered by the same people who were now hunting her family. Why are you telling me this? Because they're coming for our children next, Chike said, and for the first time, genuine emotion cracked his voice. Kemi and Taiwo carry the Adebayo name through you. As far as the Akparas are concerned, they're loose ends that need to be tied off. You bastard. Amara's voice was so quiet it was almost lost in the intercom static. You involved our children in this. Your own son and daughter. I never meant for it to go this far. The mask slipped completely now, revealing the scared, desperate man beneath. It started small, just some contracts, some paperwork. But once you're in with people like the Akparas, you don't get out. You get deeper or you get dead. So you chose deeper. You chose to make me an unwitting accomplice while I was fighting for my life. I chose to survive, he snapped. Just like you did with the cancer. We all do what we have to do to protect what matters most. What matters most to me is in that visiting room right now, Amara said coldly. And you put them in danger to save your own skin. She started to stand, but Chike pressed his hand against the glass. Wait, there's more. About your treatment, the drugs that saved your life. What about them? They were experimental. Untested. Your father used you as a test subject for treatments funded by Akpara money. You didn't just survive cancer, Amara. You survived because criminals needed the research data from your case. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place with sickening clarity. Her miraculous recovery, the treatments other doctors had called impossible, the way her father had monitored her case so closely, it hadn't been paternal love. It had been scientific necessity. She was alive because the Akparas needed her alive. Her survival had been part of their investment in illegal medical research. How long have you known? She asked. Since the beginning. Your father approached me when you were first diagnosed. He needed a way to fund the research that could save you, and I needed a way to launder money for the Akparas. It was. He struggled for the words, mutually beneficial. You used my cancer to build your criminal empire. I used their money to save your life. The irony was suffocating. The woman who had survived cancer through determination and love had actually survived through crime and corruption. The father she'd worshipped had been as much a criminal as the husband who'd betrayed her. There's something else, Chike continued desperately. The Akparas have been tracking your recovery. They know exactly how effective the treatments were. They want to eliminate you not just as a witness, but as evidence of their illegal medical research. Evidence of what? Human experimentation. If word got out that they were using cancer patients as test subjects for untested drugs, it would destroy their legitimate business interests. The pharmaceutical patents alone are worth billions. Amara sank back into her chair, the weight of revelation crushing down on her shoulders. She wasn't just a crime witness. She was living proof of crimes against humanity. Who else knows? Your medical team. Some government officials. And, he hesitated, Detective Adebayo. What? She's Dr. Adebayo's daughter, Amara. Your father's daughter from his first marriage. The detective investigating this case is your half-sister. The visiting room fell into absolute silence. Through the bulletproof glass, Amara stared at the man who had just shattered everything she thought she knew about her life, her family, her survival. Detective Folake Adebayo wasn't just investigating the case. She was personally invested in it. She'd been hunting the people who killed their father. She doesn't know you know, Chike added quickly. She's been protecting you, thinking you're an innocent victim. But if she finds out you were a willing participant in the research. I wasn't willing. I was dying. Try explaining that to someone whose father was murdered for trying to expose the same research that saved your life. Everything she'd believed about her survival, her father's legacy, even her relationship with the detective trying to protect her, it was all built on lies. She walked toward the exit, her mind reeling with impossible choices. Could she trust Detective Adebayo knowing they were sisters? Could she continue the undercover operation knowing her own survival made her complicit in the crimes she was trying to expose? And most importantly, how could she protect her children from a truth that would destroy everything they believed about their family? As she stepped into the Lagos evening, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. We know what your father told you before he died. We know what you know about the research. Meet us tomorrow or your children learn the truth about their grandfather's legacy in the worst possible way. The Akpras had been waiting for her to visit Chike. The abandoned warehouse in Apapa Industrial Estate looked like a tomb in the pre-dawn darkness. Amara sat in her car outside the rusted gates, her hands trembling despite her determination to appear strong. She'd left Kemi and Taiwo with Martha and explicit instructions to call Detective Adebayo if she wasn't back by noon. Her half-sister. The revelation still felt surreal. 3 black SUVs waited in the warehouse courtyard like predators surrounding prey. Amara took a deep breath, checked the recording device hidden in her bra, and stepped into the humid Lagos morning. The warehouse interior was a cathedral of shadows and industrial decay. Broken windows cast geometric patterns of light across concrete floors stained with substances she didn't want to identify. And there, waiting in the center like a spider in its web, stood Deputy Governor Emeka Akpra himself. He was smaller than she'd expected, almost grandfatherly in his white agbada and traditional cap. But his eyes held the cold calculation of a man who had built an empire on other people's suffering. Mrs. Okafor, he said warmly, as if greeting her at a social function. You look remarkably well for a woman who was supposed to be dead. Cancer teaches you to be resourceful. Indeed. Please, sit. He gestured to a plastic chair that had been placed precisely in the center of the warehouse floor. We have much to discuss. Amara remained standing. You wanted to meet. What do you want? Akpra's laugh echoed off the concrete walls. Direct. I appreciate that. Very well. We want your silence, your cooperation, and your understanding that certain family secrets are best left buried. My father's research. Among other things. Dr. Adebayo was a brilliant man, but he developed an unfortunate conscience toward the end. He began asking inconvenient questions about funding sources, threatening to expose research methods that had saved countless lives. He was murdered for trying to do the right thing. He was eliminated for jeopardizing medical advances that could revolutionize cancer treatment worldwide. Akpra's tone remained conversational, as if discussing the weather. Your own survival is proof of the value of our research investment. Amara felt sick, but she forced herself to remain calm. The recording device was capturing everything, but she needed more than admissions of past crimes. She needed evidence of ongoing operations. What exactly are you asking me to do? Continue your recovery. Live quietly with your children. And occasionally provide updates on your long-term health outcomes. The research that saved you is still ongoing, and you remain a valuable test subject. You want to keep studying me. Among others, we have patients across West Africa participating in various trials. Voluntary participants, of course, he added with mock sincerity. Like I was voluntary? You were dying, Mrs. Okafor. We offered hope. The fact that you survived is testament to the value of our work. That's when she noticed them, file folders stacked on a nearby table, each labeled with names and medical conditions. Her blood ran cold as she recognized some of the names. Patients from her father's clinic, people she'd met during her own treatment, fellow cancer fighters who had disappeared from support groups without explanation. How many people have you killed in the name of research? How many people have we saved? Akpara countered. Your father understood the mathematics of progress. Sometimes, individual lives must be sacrificed for the greater good. My father would never. Your father provided us with patient files for over a decade. He selected candidates for experimental treatments. He monitored results and reported outcomes. He was not the unwilling victim your husband portrayed. The warehouse floor seemed to shift beneath Amara's feet. Even Chaik's devastating revelations hadn't prepared her for this level of betrayal by the man she'd idolized. I don't believe you. Akpara nodded to one of his men, who brought over a thick file folder. Inside were documents in her father's handwriting, patient evaluations, treatment recommendations, progress reports on experimental drug trials. And photographs. Her father shaking hands with Akpara. Her father at research facilities she'd never seen. Her father signing contracts that traded human lives for medical advancement. The research that saved your life was funded by profits from drug trafficking, human trafficking, and arms dealing, Akpara said gently. Your father knew this. He accepted it as the price of progress. Amara's legs gave out. She sank into the plastic chair, staring at evidence that her father had been not just complicit but actively involved in crimes against humanity. Why are you showing me this? Because you need to understand your position. You are not an innocent victim, Mrs. Okafor. You are the living proof of illegal human experimentation funded by criminal enterprises. If this information becomes public, it will destroy the medical advances your father helped develop. Thousands of future patients will die because you chose justice over progress. It was elegant moral blackmail. Her survival had been achieved through evil means, but exposing those means would prevent others from benefiting from the research. She could seek justice for herself and destroy hope for countless others, or she could remain silent and let the crimes continue. What about my children? They carry your genetic markers, your treatment history, your unique response patterns. They are potentially valuable for future research into hereditary cancer predisposition and treatment resistance. You want to experiment on my children. We want to ensure they receive the best possible medical care should they ever need it. And we want to ensure they never learn the truth about their grandfather's work or their mother's origins. The threat was clear. Cooperate, or her children would become test subjects. Resist, and they would learn their family history in the most traumatic way possible. Akpara's voice hardened. Your husband has already provided evidence to the police. Detective Adebayo is planning raids on our facilities. We need your cooperation now, or we need your silence permanently. That's when Amara heard it, the distant sound of vehicles approaching the warehouse. Multiple engines, moving fast, surrounding the building. Akpara's expression darkened. It seems someone has been indiscreet. His men were already drawing weapons, moving toward defensive positions. Amara realized with growing horror that she was trapped in the middle of what was about to become a war zone. You're wearing a wire, Akpara said, his grandfatherly demeanor evaporating completely. How disappointing. I had hoped we could reach a civilized agreement. The warehouse doors exploded inward as police tactical teams breached the entrances simultaneously. Shouting voices, muzzle flashes, the deadly choreography of a raid in progress. But in the chaos, Amara saw something that made her blood freeze. One of Akpara's men wasn't shooting at the police. He was aiming directly at her, finger tightening on the trigger. She had come here to gather evidence to protect her children. Instead, she was about to die in a warehouse, leaving them orphaned and vulnerable to the very people who had destroyed their family. The shot rang out across the warehouse floor, but Amara felt no impact. Instead, she saw Detective Folake Adebayo, her half-sister. No! Amara screamed, but her voice was lost in the gunfire. The warehouse had become a scene from a nightmare. Smoke drifted through shafts of morning sunlight while police officers secured the scene around them. Detective Folake Adebayo lay on a stretcher, conscious but pale, her tactical vest having saved her life but not prevented the crushing impact that had broken 2 ribs. Amara knelt beside the stretcher, her hands shaking as she held her half-sister's hand. They hadn't spoken about their relationship yet, There hadn't been time, but Folake's eyes held a recognition that went deeper than professional concern. The recording, Folake whispered through gritted teeth. Did you get it? Everything. Akpra confessed to my father's murder, the illegal research, the ongoing human experimentation. Amara's voice was steady despite the chaos around them. But there's something else you need to know. Later, Folake tried to sit up, but the paramedics pushed her back down. Right now we need to. Our father didn't try to expose them, Amara said quickly, before they loaded Folake into the ambulance. He was part of it. Willingly. For over a decade. The words hit Folake like a physical blow. Her face went white, and not just from pain. That's impossible. He was going to testify. He was going to disappear with millions in research funding. The car accident wasn't murder, Folake. It was a double-cross gone wrong. The ambulance doors slammed shut before Folake could respond, but Amara saw the devastation in her sister's eyes. Both of them had built their adult lives around the memory of a man who had never existed. Deputy Governor Emeka Akpara sat in handcuffs near the warehouse entrance, his white agbada stained with dust and defeat. As Amara walked past him toward the exit, he looked up with the tired resignation of a man whose empire was crumbling. You think you've won, he said quietly. But you have no idea what you've destroyed. I know exactly what I've destroyed, Amara replied. A criminal organization that murdered innocent people in the name of medical progress. The research that saved your life will die with this investigation. The treatments that could save thousands of future cancer patients will be buried under legal proceedings and moral outrage. Your children will grow up in a world where those advances never happen because you chose revenge over progress. It was the same moral blackmail he'd used in the warehouse, but now Amara could see it for what it was, the desperate manipulation of a man who had convinced himself that evil means could be justified by good ends. My children will grow up in a world where criminals can't hide behind good intentions, she said. That's worth more than any medical advancement built on murder. Outside the warehouse, Lagos was waking up to another day. Traffic already clogged the streets, vendors were setting up their stalls, and somewhere in the city, her twins were probably having breakfast with Martha, blissfully unaware that their world had changed forever. Amara's phone rang. Adora's voice was tight with urgency. The news crews are already gathering outside your house. Word is spreading about the arrests, the illegal research, your family's involvement. We need to get Kemi and Taiwo somewhere safe before this becomes a media circus. How much do they know? Everything. The leaked police reports include details about your father's research, your experimental treatment, even your survival statistics. By evening, your medical history will be front-page news across West Africa. Amara closed her eyes, leaning against the police car that would take her back to her children. She had survived cancer, survived her husband's betrayal, survived assassination attempts. But could she survive being the most notorious cancer patient in Africa? There's more, Adora continued grimly. Chaik's lawyers are claiming he was coerced into confessing. They're arguing that he was trying to protect you from the truth about your father's crimes. They want to paint him as a loving husband driven to desperate measures. Can they do that? With the right judge and the right narrative? Maybe. Especially if public opinion turns against you. If people start seeing you as the beneficiary of crimes rather than the victim of betrayal. Amara understood. Her husband's defense would be simple. He had tried to protect his sick wife from learning that her miraculous recovery was built on blood money. Everything he'd done, the affair, the money laundering, even the murder plot, could be reframed as misguided attempts to shelter her from horrible truths. What do? We tell your story first. We control the narrative before they can twist it into something unrecognizable. As the police car pulled up to her family compound, Amara could see the media assembled outside like vultures around Carrion. Camera crews, reporters, satellite trucks, the entire circus of public judgment waiting to dissect her life for entertainment. Martha met her at the back entrance, her weathered face creased with worry. The children are asking questions, madam. They see the news vans, they hear the neighbors talking. What should I tell them? The truth, Amara said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. All of it. They deserve to know who their family really is. In the garden where her children had played just days ago, Kemi and Taiwo sat at the small table where they usually did their homework. But today's lesson would be far more difficult than anything they'd learned in school. "Mama," Kemi said, her 8-year-old voice serious beyond her years, "Martha says Daddy is in jail. She says Grandpa wasn't who we thought he was." Taiwo remained quiet, but his eyes held the same intelligence that had always reminded Amara of her father. Now that resemblance felt like a curse rather than a blessing. "Yes," Amara said, sitting down across from them. "There are things about our family that I only just learned myself. Hard things. Things that will change how people see us." "Are we in trouble because of what Daddy did?" Kemi asked. She spent the next hour telling them everything: their grandfather's criminal research, their father's betrayal, the illegal money that had funded the medical treatment that saved her life. She spoke in terms they could understand, but she didn't soften the truth. When she finished, both children were quiet for a long moment. "So you're alive because of bad people doing bad things?" Taiwo asked finally. "Yes. But you didn't know it was bad when it was happening?" "No. I was just grateful to survive." Kemi leaned forward, her small face determined. "Then we're going to make it good." "What do you mean?" "You survived for a reason, Mama. Maybe the reason wasn't what we thought before, but that doesn't mean there isn't still a reason. We just have to figure out what it is." Looking at her children, her brilliant, resilient children who had inherited the best parts of both sides of their fractured family, Amara felt something she hadn't experienced since her diagnosis: hope for the future. But that hope was about to be tested in ways she couldn't imagine. Outside, the media was preparing to tear her family apart for public consumption. Her husband's lawyers were crafting a defense that would paint her as the villain of her own story. And somewhere in Lagos, other victims of illegal medical research were about to learn that their suffering had been exposed for the world to judge. The battle for her life was far from over. In some ways, it was just beginning. But this time, she wouldn't be fighting alone. 6 months later, Amara stood at the podium of the Lagos Continental Hotel's Grand Ballroom, facing an audience of medical professionals, government officials, and journalists from across West Africa. The woman who had once hidden her bald head under colorful wraps now wore her naturally growing hair like a crown, short and silver-streaked at only 41, but dignified in its honesty. "My name is Amara Okafor," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone, "and I am alive today because of criminal medical research that cost dozens of other patients their lives." The room fell silent. Over the past 6 months, her story had dominated headlines across the continent, but she had never spoken publicly about her experience until today. "When I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer, I believed my survival was a miracle of modern medicine and my own determination to live for my children. I was wrong. My survival was the result of illegal human experimentation funded by drug money and overseen by my own father." In the audience, she could see Detective Folake Adebayo, her half-sister, sitting with other police officials who had worked the case. Folake's ribs had healed, but the relationship between the sisters was still fragile, built on shared trauma and the slow process of rebuilding trust. "Today, I want to tell you what I've learned about the difference between surviving and living, about justice and revenge, and about how we can honor the victims of these crimes by ensuring they never happen again." The presentation that followed was devastating in its thoroughness. Working with international medical investigators, Amara had helped expose a network of illegal research facilities across West Africa. The Akpara Pharmaceutical Network had been conducting unauthorized drug trials on cancer patients, HIV patients, and children with genetic disorders for over 15 years. Her father, Dr. Biodun Adebayo, had been not just complicit but instrumental in identifying vulnerable patients for experimental treatments. The car accident that killed him had indeed been murder, but not by the Akparas, by a rival criminal organization trying to steal his research data. 23 patients died in trials that were never authorized by any medical ethics board, Amara continued. Their families were told their loved ones had succumbed to their illnesses naturally. Instead, they were killed by treatments designed to benefit people like me. She clicked to the next slide, showing photographs of the victims: men, women, and children who had trusted the medical system to help them, only to be used as test subjects. But their deaths were not meaningless. The evidence we gathered from their cases has led to the arrest of 47 individuals involved in illegal medical research across 6 countries. More importantly, it has resulted in new international protocols for medical research oversight and patient protection. The audience stirred with murmurs of approval, but Amara wasn't finished. Some of you may be wondering about my own family. My husband, Chike Okafor, was sentenced to 12 years in prison for money laundering, conspiracy, and attempted murder. His accomplice, Ngozi Adelik, received 8 years for her role in the conspiracy. Deputy Governor Emeka Okpara and his associates are awaiting trial on charges including murder, human trafficking, and crimes against humanity. She paused, looking out at the faces in the audience, some sympathetic, some skeptical, all waiting to see how she would address the most difficult question of all. You may also be wondering how I can live with the knowledge that my survival came at such a terrible cost. The truth is, some days I can't. Some nights I lie awake wondering if I deserve to be alive when better people died to make my survival possible. Her voice caught slightly, but she continued. But my children, Kemi and Taiwo, reminded me that survivors don't get to choose the circumstances of their survival. We only get to choose what we do with the life we've been given. And I choose to use mine to ensure no other family goes through what we experienced. The screen behind her displayed the logo of the Adebayo Foundation for Medical Ethics, the organization she had founded with compensation from the lawsuit against Okpara Pharmaceuticals. The foundation provides free legal representation for families affected by medical malpractice, funds legitimate cancer research through transparent and ethical channels, and works with governments across Africa to strengthen medical research oversight. She clicked to a final slide showing a photograph of herself with Kemi and Taiwo at the foundation's new headquarters, all 3 of them smiling despite everything they had endured. My children are now 9 years old. They attend a new school under assumed names for their safety, but they know exactly who they are and where they come from. They know their grandfather was a criminal who did terrible things in the name of medical progress. They know their father betrayed their mother during the most difficult period of her life. And they know their mother survived through circumstances that were morally complicated at best. But they also know that knowledge comes with responsibility. Kemi wants to be a lawyer specializing in medical ethics. Taiwo wants to be a doctor who conducts research the right way. They have chosen to transform their family legacy from one of crime and betrayal into one of justice and healing. As she concluded her presentation, the ballroom erupted in sustained applause. But Amara's attention was drawn to 2 small figures at the back of the room, her children, who had insisted on being present for this moment despite the difficult subject matter. Later, as the evening wound down and the last journalists finished their interviews, Amara found herself alone with Kemi and Taiwo in the hotel's quiet garden. "Are you proud of us, Mama?" Kemi asked, settling beside her mother on a stone bench. "Every single day," Amara replied, wrapping her arms around both children. "But more than proud, I'm grateful. You saved my life just as much as those illegal treatments did. You gave me a reason to survive, and then you gave me a reason to live." Taiwo looked up at her with serious eyes. "Do you think Daddy will ever understand what he did to us?" It was a question Amara had wrestled with for months. Chike had written letters from prison, dozens of them, attempting to explain his actions, to justify his choices, to ask for forgiveness she wasn't sure she could give. "I think your father understands that he made terrible choices," she said carefully. "Whether he truly understands the impact of those choices, that remains to be seen." "Will we ever see him again?" Kemi asked. "That's up to you," Amara replied honestly. "When you're older, if you choose to visit him or speak with him, I won't stop you. But you should know that you don't owe anyone forgiveness, not even family. Forgiveness is a gift you give because you choose to, not because someone deserves it." As they sat together in the garden, watching Lagos's lights twinkle in the distance, Amara's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Folake Adebayo. "Watched your presentation online. Dad would have been proud of who you've become, even if he wasn't proud of who he was. Thank you for giving his victims a voice." It had taken months for the sisters to rebuild their relationship after learning the truth about their father. Folklore had initially blamed Amara for benefiting from crimes that had cost their father his life, while Amara had struggled with guilt over surviving when so many others hadn't. But grief and shared purpose had eventually brought them together. "Mama," Kemi said softly, "I've been thinking about what you said tonight. About how survivors don't choose their circumstances." "Yes. I think maybe the bad things that happened to our family weren't really about us. They were about choices other people made. But what we do now, that's about us. That's about who we choose to be." Amara looked down at her daughter, struck by the wisdom in her 9-year-old voice. "Where did that come from?" "From you," Taiwo said simply. "You taught us that surviving isn't enough. You have to make your survival mean something." As they walked back into the hotel, Amara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 2 years ago, she had been a dying woman whose greatest hope was simply to live long enough to see her children grow up. Tonight, she was a survivor who had transformed her trauma into purpose, her betrayal into justice, her family's shame into a legacy of healing. The legal battles weren't over. Chaik's appeals would continue for years, and other victims of the Akpra network were still coming forward with their stories. But for the first time since her diagnosis, Amara felt genuinely optimistic about the future. Her phone rang as they reached the hotel lobby. A known number, but she recognized the voice immediately. "Amara? This is Dr. Sarah Okafor from the University of Cape Town Medical School. I've been following your foundation's work, and I wanted to discuss a research partnership opportunity." "I'm listening." "We're developing new protocols for ethical cancer research, specifically focused on ensuring informed consent and patient advocacy throughout the treatment process. We'd like to invite you to serve as an advisory board member." It was perfect, a chance to use her experience to prevent other families from enduring what hers had suffered. "I'd be honored," Amara replied. As she hung up, Kemi tugged on her sleeve. "Another person who wants to help? Another person who wants to make sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else." "Good," Taiwo said with 9-year-old determination. "Because we have a lot of work to do." Walking out of the hotel into the warm Lagos evening, Amara realized that her children were right. They did have work to do, the work of healing, of justice, of building something beautiful from the wreckage of betrayal and loss. She was no longer the woman who had walked into that hotel suite 6 months ago to surprise her husband with news of her recovery. That woman had been naive, trusting, dependent on others for her sense of worth and security. The woman walking into the Lagos night was harder, wiser, and infinitely more dangerous to those who preyed on the vulnerable. She had survived cancer, betrayal, and attempted murder. She had exposed a criminal network that had operated with impunity for decades. She had rebuilt her relationship with her children on a foundation of truth rather than comfortable lies. But most importantly, she had learned the difference between surviving and living. Surviving was what she had done in the hospital, fighting cancer with every fiber of her being. Living was what she was doing now, using her survival to create meaning, to seek justice, to protect others who couldn't protect themselves. As they drove through the busy Lagos streets toward their new home, a modest house in a quiet neighborhood where her children could grow up safely, Amara thought about the future. There would be more legal battles, more media attention, more difficult conversations about their family's complicated history. But there would also be birthdays and school plays and family dinners. There would be Kemi's first court case and Taiwo's first research paper. There would be graduations and weddings and grandchildren who would grow up knowing that their grandmother was not just a survivor, but a woman who had transformed survival into purpose. The woman who had thought she was dead and forgotten had instead become very much alive and utterly unforgettable. Her story would be told for generations, not as a tale of victimhood, but as proof that even in the darkest circumstances, it's possible to choose justice over revenge, healing over hatred, and hope over despair. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in years, Amara Okafor was certain she would win. Because she had already won the only victory that truly mattered. She had shown her children that it's possible to survive anything life throws at you and emerge stronger, wiser, and more compassionate than you were before. And that, she thought as she tucked her sleeping children into their beds in their new home, was the greatest legacy any parent could leave. The end. What an incredible journey of survival, betrayal, and ultimate redemption. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to African Tales by Ben for more powerful stories like this one, and share with someone who needs to hear about the power of resilience. Comment below, what part of Amara's story inspired you the most? Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? Your stories matter too. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest African drama stories. Until next time, remember, no matter what life throws at you, you are stronger than you know, and your survival can become someone else's hope. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.